In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at very severe cold air that is going to be moving into the eastern United States. We already have cold air, but it's just going to get even colder over time. And we have numerous major snowstorm threats to discuss. A lot of them very far to the south for the deep south central states, the Gulf states, the southeast states. But we also have a couple that we're concerned about for the mid-Atlantic and northeast that could pull up the coast. And we're going to see some of that on the model guidance today. So let's dive into things. We're taking a look here at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. This covers the 21st through 25th, and you can see severe cold air here in the east expected during that time frame, according to the National Weather Service. When we look at the precipitation, we can tell, just like I was saying, that a lot of these storms are going to move through the deeper south areas into the southeast. So a lot of those pockets in the northern regions here will be where we're watching for some potential snowfall, perhaps a little drier as you move further northward until you move even further northward where we get back into the above average precipitation. Likely with this big time Arctic pattern that we're seeing, we have a lot of clipper systems moving through these areas, and that's going to help bring some precipitation during this deep cold. As we take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlooks, we can see this covers the 23rd through 29th of January, so it takes us almost to the end of the month. And we can see continued signs of deeper cold here throughout the east and south central states, while the west remains kind of neutral, a little bit warm here in the central western states. So definitely a colder look still as we move towards the end of the month. When we look at the precipitation, same thing. The areas we will be eyeballing are in the further south areas, but they are leaving the door open for perhaps some storms moving further northward up the coast here. Let's take a look at the past 15 days, the full first half of January here, and what we see is a lot of cold moving through the central states and also into the eastern states overall. Brutal cold, actually. Typically, when you're looking at a below average month, for instance, you're looking at 1 to 3 degrees below average, because you're going to see some warmer days in there, you're going to see some really cold days, and you're going to see some more neutral days that are closer to normal, and that'll bring you some below normal temperatures. But what we're looking at here is temperatures that are 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees below normal, even up to 9 degrees below normal here, and that is really severe for a 15-day period. So this is indicative of far below average temperatures over a long time span, and that's exactly what we've seen for the first half of January here. And if we see a monthly look that looks like this, it will go down as one of the colder Januaries pretty much ever, because it's very rare for it to be cold from start to finish, and we're looking at potential for that for the most part here in the central and eastern states. Let's move into the model guidance. We're going to see some disagreement. We're also going to see some agreement between the European model and GFS model. Obviously, when we look at our jet stream off rip here, we see that we are really warm in the west, colder in the east here overall, and that doesn't look to end for the most part anytime soon, other than a little bit of a break that we're going to get here very soon, actually. So over the next couple days, we will get like a 24-hour break from it, but for the most part, it won't be permanently ending anytime soon, I guess is a better way to put it. We do see our first low developing over the western Gulf, and if you've been keeping up with our videos, you know that most of our storms are going to originate from this area over the coming days. So let's watch what ends up happening. We see that this cool down is going to pretty quickly start to warm up as warm air spreads from west to east here as we move towards the 17th. That storm basically does nothing except bring maybe some thunderstorms to Florida. We do see a brief warm up, especially for the 17th here, where your jet stream is quite different. We see a bit of a trough here in the west, still a little bit of a trough here in the east, but there is warmer air making its way in, and this will bring us neutral to slightly above normal temperatures for a time. We do see, however, a low moving towards the area here, this kind of sweet spot between the Hudson Bay and the Great Lakes, and this has been a really big sign that we have cold moving into the east throughout the fall and winter this year. So I definitely expect that to happen. I know that happens, but every time we see that, I know that that's what's going to happen. We see 991 here moving past the Hudson Bay. Now we get a secondary low down here, and there is some snowfall along the cold front, especially on the northern end. So for states like Michigan, Indiana, Ohio on the northern ends, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia here seeing some snowfall, and then mostly thunderstorms here for the deeper south areas underneath all of this activity. We can tell the cold is definitely on the way in a big way. This is Saturday afternoon. We get some snowfall for the mid-Atlantic and Northeast as we move towards Sunday. And then we get this low forming around the 19th offshore. This does bring some snowfall on this model run for areas of the mid-Atlantic and perhaps stretching up into southern New England somewhat. It doesn't look like the most major low in the world, but we do see some snowfall there for those couple of days. And as we move towards Tuesday the 21st, this is where we get our first kind of deep south snowfall threat. We see another low, the second one now, moving into the western Gulf of Mexico. And we see wintry precipitation touching the Gulf Coast for Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and stretching up into the southeast here. Not all of it's in the form of snowfall. We do have kind of mixed precipitation near the Gulf Coast, obviously, within 100 miles, I'd say, of the Gulf Coast. But it is still very impressive to see any sort of frozen precipitation for these areas. And it's coming due to this very rare cold air that is moving deep to the south. That is what's allowing for this to happen. The storms are going to be common in this area, so that's not unheard of or really rare by any means, but the cold being there is what's rare, and that's what allows for the storm to take place as frozen precipitation. Really crazy stuff. And we see snowfall from Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia here for the afternoon hours, about 1 p.m. there on Tuesday, January 21st. As we move that on, we see that it kind of flatly moves out. We see the lowest pressure here is well offshore. We get some heavier snowfall here, perhaps for South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, before this kind of just slides out quickly. This would limit accumulation because of the quickness of this storm. There's been a lot of potential on models for this to pull much more up the coast, and that would increase snowfall totals. So this is kind of a halfway there, halfway not type of look as far as a major snowstorm. We do get another system developing in the Gulf very quickly short after, though. This is Tuesday the 23rd, or Thursday the 23rd, better yet. We get some broad low pressure across the northern Gulf of Mexico here, and we see frozen precipitation throughout a lot of the deep south and southeast states. As we move towards that afternoon, that one does come to an end, though. But before you know it, we have another system forming in the northern Gulf. This is Saturday, January 25th. And what we see is we get a little bit of frozen precipitation, perhaps there for the northern Gulf states into a bit of the southeast, but the cold isn't there like it was for those other ones. And a lot of our energy still by kind of the 28th time frame here is still originating from the Gulf, but because we have a warmer jet stream in the east, we end up seeing a lot of this flow northward, and we get some snowfall here for the Ohio Valley and northeast here. As by the 28th, look at this, we have a trough in the west, ridge in the east. Look, it's been so long since I could say that, and maybe we're going to move into something a lot more similar to this over time. We do have thunderstorms and even severe weather taking place here across the deeper south in this type of scenario. Let's take this towards Wednesday here on the 29th, and what we see is that some snowfall occurs for the mountainous northeast, mostly New England here. Later on Wednesday the 29th, the cold does start to look like it's moving more towards the east. We have some storminess over the southeast, a little bit of warming here over the southwest, and this is the sign that's kind of leading me to believe that this cold could be moving back towards the east, although it's a little bit irrelevant because we're already at hours 360, and this is the range where things start to look a lot different from model run to model run, so it's hard to even say if this is actually the look we'll have or not by that time frame. The GFS model, again, we're going to have some differences, a little bit more action pulling up the coast in this instance. Let's take it towards our first snowfall threat, and this will be the 18th. And we see some snowfall showers across the Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic, northeast. There's a low is offshore. And then by the kind of Sunday into Monday time frame, 19th into 20th, we do start to see some low pressure forming, but it's offshore of North Carolina. And we're getting snowfall for North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee here. And that actually grows into something a little bit more substantial as it really starts to form not too well offshore. It's pretty close actually there to Virginia and North Carolina. We see heavy snowfall throughout North Carolina, Virginia, the Delmarva, even stretching perhaps up into New Jersey here by 1 a.m. on Monday. As we move it forward a couple of hours, we can see the problem with the trajectory is that it goes further and further offshore over time. So that's why these southern areas kind of cash in and these northern areas don't, because it's basically missing you guys. It's hundreds of miles offshore by the time it's getting towards the northeast, but it's only maybe 100 or 200 offshore for this more southern corridor. So this scenario, which we're within 5 days of this, by the way, this isn't some sort of long-range speculative outlook, or something that we're talking about just a storm signal like you might be used to on this channel. This is something that we are 4 days away from, 4 to 5 days away from, and something that needs to be considered a real possibility at this point. Not only a possibility, everything's a real possibility, but a actual probability, so that some of these areas will see snowfall. I was looking at the National Weather Service page for my local area in Southeast Virginia this morning, and they did indicate the chance of snowfall happening around this time frame. So definitely something to keep our eyes on. There will be plenty of cold air. If the storm forms in that area, you could expect a perhaps plowable snowfall event for areas of North Carolina, Virginia, Delmarva, maybe Maryland, DC. That's kind of the look right now. As we keep going, this is when our 22nd system starts to get going. So we see this low forming over the Western Gulf. This is the one with the bigger potential. The current trajectory would take it somewhere nicely through the southeast, kind of. Let's see what this does, though. As we move towards Wednesday the 22nd, what we see is that we're flip-flopping here. The model's too far offshore. The snowfall is for the fish off of the Outer Banks, maybe even for the Outer Banks. Little too suppressed to the southeast. The cold moves in too quickly. The storm moves in too slowly, and we don't see it come together in that scenario. But similarly to the European model, we get another Western Gulf system forming very, very quickly here for the 23rd. That's going to be Thursday. And we do get some Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas snowfall going as we move a little further through. This one wants to pull up the coast. This is Friday the 24th. The low is over kind of Georgia, so a little further inland, but we can tell that this one is starting to move northward in a hurry. So we're seeing Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia, and portions of Virginia seeing snowfall already by Friday afternoon. And what we see is that it is hugging the coast pretty closely, and we get crushed for DC, Philadelphia, New York City, up to Boston. This is a classic snowstorm. Look at how close it is to the coast here by 1 a.m. on Saturday the 25th. 997 there. Very, very favorable positioning for these more coastal areas to see a massive snowfall event. Again, we're talking DC, Philadelphia being in the kind of bullseye here. New York City as well, a little tucked into the coast there, and then Boston are all in prime position if this scenario takes place. This one is beyond 5 days. It's actually beyond 7 days. We're looking closer to 10-day range. So we can still expect a lot of movement, but it's good to see the model showing this. This shows that this is possible, obviously, and not just, possible as in everything's possible, but more so in a way of the models are calling for it. So there is some things about the current pattern that point towards this, which is a good sign for the 10-day range. As we keep going, we see that that one comes to an end. We get that kind of warmer look for the 26th, 27th, 28th. We do get another Gulf system, but that really moves up into the plains and then becomes more of a severe weather event, perhaps throughout the deep south, even Ohio Valley and southeast here. And we do get a Great Lakes and Canada snowfall event around that 30th time frame before we get a little bit more cold moving in. This is a more neutral pattern, near normal for most areas west to east. So really an interesting look to end the model run. And we've seen the models end off on a note like this a lot of times. And obviously, like I said earlier, when you're looking at the 10 to 15 day range, that's when we're talking about massive changes, like almost polar opposites possible from model run to model run. So we really start to drop off on the model accuracy after that 10, 12 day range. And that's what we're seeing here perhaps, but there's always once in a blue moon where they're kind of like right with it at about the 15-day range. And that's why we still show it, because it's still possible. And it's hard to say if it's going to be one of those times where it's right or one of those times where it's wrong. And, I can't really be the gatekeeper of that information based on my own personal feelings or agendas based on what it's showing or not showing. So I choose to show all of it every single day. Let's take a look at the total precipitation, and can you tell where all the activity is going to be? From the Western Gulf straight up through the southeast seems to be the most active region here, with many, many storms moving through this pocket. A couple of them a lot closer to the coast. That area is going to be really active over the next 15 days. And really, when we look at the anomalies, most everywhere else is below normal as far as precipitation is concerned. Real quickly, I do want to switch this over to the GFS, and we get a lot more of this. It's still in this area, but we do see a lot of it pulling up into the Midwest and Ohio Valley, pulling up the coast, and that would be a more favorable look for the entire coastline, to say the least. As we take a look at the total snowfall on the European model, we do get some plowable snowfall in these areas, but it's like just plowable. Like we're talking 2, 3, 4, 5 inches perhaps. There is some suggestions that like the Smoky Mountains could have 6 to 10. I would see that being a big possibility, of course. And then between Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi there, maybe some 6 to 10 inch areas, which they did just see quite a bit of snowfall throughout some of these deeper south states. So I wouldn't be shocked if we do see some, exceeding expectations as far as amounts in these areas. That wouldn't surprise me the most. When we look at the zoomed in look, we do see again 2, 3, 4, 5 being the most common amounts to see in a lot of these blue areas, but it is deeper south, which makes it more major than it would be if, let's say, New Hampshire was going to see 2 to 3 inches. It would be a normal, it'd be like a normal Wednesday afternoon for them, I guess. So a little different when we're talking South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. These can be very, very impactful. GFS model is larger with the amounts in further north. So we see these kind of pockets in here getting the highlight of a lot of these storms. We do get some deeper south snowfall around Texas and Louisiana, but a lot less for the more deep south areas and a lot more as you move just a little bit further northward. We're talking more in terms of 10 to 20 inches in a lot of these pink areas. Probably would verify at about 8 to 10 mostly, maybe 8 to 12. This is the amount of snow that falls out of the sky, not the amount of snow that actually accumulates on the ground. So it's always important to remember that. Let's take a look at the zoomed in look. And again, we're talking 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 inches falling out of the sky. That'll probably, again, end up being much more like 8 to 12 inches accumulating on the ground. So that's kind of where I get my estimates from. Let's take a look here at the temperatures, and we do expect cold to kind of continue for another 24 hours, maybe towards Thursday afternoon, but then we get this little bit of a warm up that's going to be for the 17th and 18th before we get a much more major cool down for Monday the 20th, Tuesday the 21st. Here we're talking extremes. This is 20, 30, 40, maybe more degrees below normal for especially a lot of the magenta areas, which is once every 5, once every 10-year type of event. But really everywhere within these blues is going to be on the major cool down side of things. So we're talking almost the entire eastern United States. Even the greens is far below average, and we're seeing that for most of the United States, period. And then the blues are all below normal. That's going to cover 90% of your nation here for the day on Tuesday the 21st. Crazy stuff. As we move a little bit forward, we see it lasts a couple more days before we start to get warm air working its way in. It looks like more major cold air could be on the way for the end of January, beginning of February timeframe. But again, we're losing accuracy here towards the end, so we'll have to watch and see if this sticks around or if we see any big changes. Here's the GFS model. Again, cold. Brief warm up 17th, 18th, 19th before major cold air moves in. Almost equally as major. We see the magentas all over the place. And then it lasts until about the 25th, and then we start to see warm air working its way in before cold air works its way back in. You can tell it's kind of a toss-up after the 25th, to say the least. That's kind of how I see it, at least, right now. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe. We're going to continue to uncover all of these things together, kind of going over the temperatures, the snowstorms. We're going to know a lot more every single day. I already feel like we've kind of really unlocked a lot of info about this weekend system, and early next week we're starting to get a better idea. So I feel like over the next 2 days we're going to learn a lot more. So be sure to subscribe so you can tune in with us. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.